Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan. I've been practicing law for 24 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I'm a frequent writer for places like Opposite Lock, and a lot of my stuff has appeared on Jalopnik. I also have written quite a few books, including a book called The Great American Jetpack. I don't think I've ever mentioned this before on my podcast. It came out a couple years ago. It's the story of jetpacks, how they developed them, and why we don't have them today. Starting with the Hiller flying platforms, which one of their guys said was so easy to fly, even a trained bear could do it. And notwithstanding that, they never got a trained bear to do it, and they never actually sold them to the U.S. Army, despite their pleas for the Army to buy them. So I cover the entire quest for the ultimate individual lift device in the Great American Jetpack. If you want a copy for cheaper than Amazon, I'll include shipping and sign it for you. Just send me a note at lehto@kennan.com, Lehto@kennan.com, and I will hook you up. Today we're talking about how you should not be tricked into buying a former rental vehicle. Don't be tricked into buying a former rental vehicle. This is a topic that bothers a lot of people for some odd reason, primarily people who sell former rental cars. I've represented a few people who bought them and didn't know it. And the first example was a very nice woman. This is the prototypical woman who could pass for your grandmother, assuming your grandmother was very, very nice and nobody would ever want to hurt her. And my client bought this car. Turns out it was a former rental vehicle. And when she found out, she said, "This is the weirdest thing. I was told that it was a demonstrator. I was told that it was actually driven by the owner's wife at the dealership. The dealership owner's wife drove this car around, took really good care of it, took it to church on Sundays, that kind of thing. And I was told it was a demonstrator, but it turns out it was a former rental vehicle." So we filed a lawsuit against the dealership. And I remember going to one of the early settlement conferences and them telling the judge, Your Honor, there's no difference between a demonstrator and a rental vehicle. They're really the same thing. Now, this is not true. While demonstrators might be beaten on a little bit, rentals are whipped like mules that you don't care about or own. And if you've ever driven a rental, you know it's true. If you've ever seen someone drive a rental car, you also know it's true. But little known fact, rentals are also built often to slightly lesser standards, or at least are loaded up with fewer things. I know people who've told me that when they bought rental cars, former rental cars, they were missing things that you just assume might be in a regular car. So it might be something as simple as floor mats or some options. But I've also heard, for instance, that they put less sound deadener or even use slightly cheaper paint, believe it or not. Because when they buy these cars in fleets, they often buy a fleet of hundreds or thousands of cars. And if they can save a couple bucks on a car over a few thousand cars, the manufacturer will do it. So rentals are often built to lesser standards, and they are cheaper cars, but then they're beaten on during their rental life. So generally speaking, you don't want to buy a rental. Now, nowadays, you can go into Carfax, and hopefully Carfax or similar type of system will spot a former rental and tell you this vehicle is a former rental. But number one, Carfax misses stuff. But number two, back in the old days, like my client I told you about, when we went into court, there was no such thing as Carfax back then. I know I tell stories about how old I am. My website's now 20 years old, okay? But I've been practicing law for so long now that Carfax didn't exist yet. And so when we went to court, they told the judge, "Your Honor, there's nothing wrong with this car, it's just a former rental." And I said, "Well, I have a problem. If it's nothing wrong with it because it's a former rental, why did you lie and say it was a demo?" And they said, "Well, demo, rental, same thing." And so I actually got the judge to force them to give us the names of other people they had sold quote-unquote demos to. And the first person I called up, I said, "Hey, by the way, they tell you it was a former rental?" They said, "No. Can I sue them?" I said, "You probably could." They said, "Can I hire you?" And I said, "Sure." So I filed a second lawsuit against the same dealership over selling a former rental as a demo. And I very quickly got a phone call from another attorney I'd never heard of before. And I said, "What are you doing calling me about this case?" He said, "Well, they fired the other guy because he screwed the case up." And I said, "Why is that?" And they said, because you're now just generating cases based on his bad work." And I said, "Well, depends on how you look at it." And they said, "Well, we'll settle both cases. Let's just make these things go away." And they, of course, were worried I was going to contact more people who'd bought demos that were former rentals. And then after that case, those cases settled, I kind of always wondered what would become of this. What would I encounter more former rental vehicles being sold as demos? And instead of dealing with me on a case-by-case basis, the automobile dealers went to Lansing through lobbyists and got the law changed. Now you might say, "Wait, Steve, how do you change the law?" I mean, this is just a fact. Well, they passed a law called MCL 257.233B. And it says, and it's written backwards, but pay attention, program vehicle means a motor vehicle from either the current model year or the immediately preceding model year that was repurchased by a manufacturer or distributor from a rental car company. So what these guys can do now is they can buy a rental car from Hertz or Avis or whoever else, Americrash, and they can take that car and they can put it on the lot and say it's a program vehicle. And if you look at this car and it looks really nice, and you walk on and you, well, what's a program vehicle? They say, well, it's a program vehicle. It's a, you've heard of programs. GM's got a program, like an employee purchase program or an executive program. Who knows? It's a program. Hey, get with the program. And so the program vehicle now in Michigan means it's a former rental vehicle, or it could be. I've talked to guys who do logic, philosophy for a living, and the fact that program vehicle could mean rental doesn't mean that all rentals are programs. Okay, I don't know. It's a Venn diagram, which I can't describe on a podcast. So now, if you're looking at a vehicle on a dealership lot and they tell you it's a program vehicle, it very well could be a former rental vehicle. Now, you might ask yourself, Steve, that's just a weird little thing they passed into law. Is that really all they were doing in Lansing at that time? Hey, thanks for asking. Here's the thing about what people do in Lansing when they get laws passed. You never just, it's like if you go to a restaurant, you just don't order just a sandwich. You get other stuff along with it, right? Okay. So when you're in Lansing and you're getting a law passed, you don't just ask for something simple like, oh, what can we call former rental vehicles program vehicles? They say, oh, by the way, can we also get it where we don't have to disclose damage done to a car prior to delivery? And legislators who are happy to take care of lobbyists who are throwing money at them, literally throwing money at them. And I personally believe I may have used the word literally in that sentence correctly. They got the law changed, and I'm not making this up again. This is the same law, MCL 257, 233B, that a dealer in new motor vehicles is not required to disclose to a purchaser or lessee under this act that any glass, tires, wheels, bumpers, audio equipment, in-dash components contained in the living quarters of a motorhome that are not required for the operation of the motorhome as a motor vehicle were damaged at any time if the damaged item has been replaced with original manufacturer's parts and material. So first of all, put a brand new vehicle on the lot, okay? Someone can take the vehicle off the lot. Let's say they steal it, take it for a joyride. When they're done with the joyride, they take a crowbar and they bust out all the windows. They steal the wheels. They pry out the radio. They steal everything inside the car. The dealership can recover that car, bring it back to their lot, replace the glass, replace the wheels, replace the interior of the car, replace the stereo, and sell it as brand new to you and not tell you any of the foregoing. They can just simply say this car is brand new. Now, it gets better. They also got the law written in such a way that it says that repaired damage to a motor vehicle not exceeding the cost of cumulative repairs as described above, blah, blah, blah. They don't have to disclose body damage. Okay, I'll summarize this one for you. They don't have to disclose body damage to you if the body damage doesn't exceed $750 or 5% of the vehicle's MSRP. So that same vehicle that had the window smashed out and the wheels stolen and the stereo pried out and the interior stolen and stripped, let's suppose it also had a crunched in fender and a smashed hood. If they can fix those two things for less than $750 or 5% of the vehicle's MSRP, they don't have to tell you that either. And they can just tell you it's a brand new car. So you buy this brand new car that's been stripped, smashed, repaired, replaced, blah, 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 and they sell it to you as brand new. Now, in the old days, if they had done this to you and you said, hey, this is obviously not a brand new vehicle anymore with all this kind of damage to it, you could have done what they call revoke your acceptance of the vehicle. You could say it doesn't conform to the contract which called for you to deliver to me a brand new vehicle. And here's the thing. You can redefine the law all you want. You can say black is white, up is down, demo is program. But when you start saying things like smashed and fixed is brand new, most people stop and go, no, it's not. Well, the law says it is. And that's the crazy thing about the law. And I have people tell me, Steve, this is a stupid law. And I said, of course it is. It's one of the dumbest laws ever written. But legislators don't pass laws because they're smart or because the laws make sense. They pass laws because lobbyists throw money at them, big bundles of money. Lobbyists could possibly even get hurt by the amount of money being thrown at them if the wads of money are too large, okay? I'm actually worried about the safety of the legislators in Lansing because of the fact that they might get injured if they get hit in the eye or something, by a big bundle of money when someone's saying, by the way, I'd like you to change a law that will completely favor me and my profession and will completely screw over consumers who vote for you and put you in office. And the legislator says, oh, by the way, is that money flying at my face? Sure, I'll pass any law you want me to, as long as it's not totally crazy. And let's face it, right now, we're in an election cycle. Is anyone talking about consumer laws? Very few people are. And instead, they're talking about all kinds of other crazy stuff about how we're going to do much more broad things like make America great again, or, return to the good old days, or somehow we're gonna overhaul the system. And meanwhile, what's really killing us is these laws being passed where legislators say, sure, demo equals program, program equals former rental, and a smashed and fixed car equals brand new. So if you're in Michigan and you buy a brand new car, okay, you need to be aware of the fact the vehicle may have been wrecked or smashed before you bought it, and they may have repaired it. I understand that the odds of this happening are slim, meaning that it doesn't happen very often. There might only be one car on a lot that's got this, has had this happen to it. But this means you need to inspect a brand new car. I've had people tell me, they said, Steve, I bought a brand new car. I picked it up in the evening, put it in my driveway. Next morning I walked up and I noticed a big old scratch on the side of it. And I didn't scratch it on the drive home. It must have been scratched when I picked it up. And I said, well, did you walk around the car? They said, no. I said, why not? They said, it's brand new. I said, well, people think I'm paranoid. I'm an attorney, and I say, before you buy anything, you should inspect it, okay? I don't care what it is. And they say, but I don't need to inspect a brand new car, do I? Yes, you do. This is why. You might spot overspray in the trunk. You might spot broken pieces of glass underneath the back seat. I've represented people both before and after this law was passed about non-disclosure of pre-delivery damage. And I remember in the old days, clients who bought vehicles that had been taken on joy rides and rolled, and they'd done thousands and thousands of dollars of repairs to the vehicle, put it out on the lot and sold it as new. And my client, the first nice weekend of the summer, decides to clean the car out, picks up one of the rear floor mats and finds pieces of broken glass underneath the floor mat in the back. And they go, hey, where'd that come from? Well, it came from your car back when it was smashed before they sold it to you and fixed it and sold it as new. I've also told the story on this show about my client who bought the brand new Ford truck, although I don't think I mentioned before it was a Ford, but there you go. And he went to flip on the defroster and he got a piece of glass in the eye. And we said, Ford and the dealership, congratulations, you're buying this vehicle back. And what had happened was the vehicle had been damaged in delivery. And they did buy the vehicle back. And one of the reasons was that there was a personal injury involved in this case, which made it a little trickier. And I was personally very interested in whether or not they were going to defend the case. And they did defend it a little bit, but they're pointing their fingers at each other because it was damaged in transit. And quite frankly, I don't know. I admit I don't know this. Vehicles are manufactured by a manufacturer, and then they're sold by independent dealers who are not owned by the manufacturers, unless, of course, you're Tesla. And so then the question becomes, when the vehicle's in transit, who owns it? Who's responsible for it? And again, I don't know. So the vehicle got damaged in transit, and the dealership fixed the car, sold it to my client without disclosing the broken window. And of course, they thought they'd get away with it until my client got a piece of glass in his eye and went to the hospital. And then later came back and said, guys, your truck tried to kill me. And if you go look onto Jalopnik and do a quick search, Lehto, and my vehicle tried to kill me, you'll find the story of that vehicle. And it's a crazy example, but that's the kind of stuff that can happen. But the legislators, again, in our state capitol don't think that those kinds of things are important. So if a vehicle gets smashed and it gets taken back to the dealership and they can fix it for $750 or less, then they can do that without disclosing it to you. And of course, we all know how human nature works. If the vehicle's got $800 in damage, the dealership fixes it in-house and bills themselves for $750. Because the $50 they lose by underestimating the damage, they more than make up for by not disclosing that damage. And I've never, ever heard of a dealership selling a vehicle at a discount because it was damaged pre-delivery and them saying, you know something, guys, we damaged this car, let's put it out on the lot with a note saying, discount, vehicle damage pre-delivery. I've never heard of that in my entire life. If you've heard of that, please send me a note. I'd love to hear about it. I've heard crazy stories about people who claim to have gotten discounts because of things that happen to vehicles, but never one where somebody said, yeah, the dealership damaged it pre-delivery and decided to pass those savings along to me. No, in fact, usually they hide them from you, and like I said in Michigan, they can do that and get away with it. Now, getting back to the original concept of rentals and whether or not you get tricked into buying one, if you want to buy a rental and you find out it's a rental and you get a good price on it because it's a former rental, you go right ahead. All I'm ever talking about in this show is about how you need to be, as a consumer, educated. You need to know what you're getting when you buy something. And as long as you're educated, you know what you're getting, you get what you're paid for, I got no problem with that. So if you want to buy a vehicle with a skipped title, knock yourself out. You want to buy a vehicle that's been sliced in half and Frankenstein together, as long as you know that and you're willing to deal with it, great. You want to buy a former wreck or salvage vehicle, again, I know guys out there who love those vehicles and they do it all the time. Again, knock yourself out, do it, but you gotta know. But you have to also understand that in Michigan and in some other states, they don't have to tell you about pre-delivery damage to a brand new vehicle, and they don't have to tell you a vehicle was a former rental vehicle. They can call it a program vehicle. Okay, so that again is, don't be tricked into buying a former rental, and inspect all cars you buy, even if they're brand new. Again, a reminder, Great American Jetpack, that's this week's book we're talking about. It is the quest for the ultimate individual lift device. If you're curious to know why we don't have these yet, even though James Bond flew one in Thunderball, and they flew one into the opening ceremonies in 1984 at the Los Angeles Olympics, one of the most viewed events in world history. A man flew in on a rocket belt, and everybody thought, wow, those are just around the corner. And again, they're not here yet. The book explains why. It's the quest for the ultimate individual lift device. Shoot me an email. I'll hook you up for less than Amazon. I'll sign it. I'll mail it to you anywhere. I don't care. Lehto@Kennan.com. Lehto@Kennan.com. Any questions or comments, always fire them my way. LehtosLaw.com. LehtosLaw.com. I'm on Twitter @Steve Lehto, @SteveLehto. And of course, the show's on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Thanks for watching, listening. Bye-bye.